Over the years, dozens of journalists have walked through these halls and called Cable 12 home. They've made an impact on the industry and hopefully our viewers. They all have one thing in common. They've each been a part of the Cable 12 news story. I'm Christina Dragovich, and this is Our Story, 20 years in the making. It was a new concept. For the first time, a private news entity brought stories of the people to the people on the community channel. But the story of how it came together is not so well known. Former technical director and producer Charles Johnson explains the idea was born with a question.
And David Burrows walked into our office and said, "Hey, do you guys know how we can put a news ticker?" They just got the TV guide to the bottom. They said, "Hey, what's the update in the news around the country?" And I was like, "What goes in that little square box on the TV guide, Channel 5? He's like, I said, "Could video go in there?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." I said, "I have an idea." At the time, we didn't think about starting a newscast on Cable 12. We thought about putting a news update on Channel 5. That's what I was asking for. And I called Jerome Sawyer, who I had a great working relationship from ZNS. I used to produce all of his stuff.
At the time, Cable 12 was producing local favorites like My 5 Cents and Bahamian Artist with coverage of community events. Over at Island FM on Dowswell Street, the time was ripe for something new.
Thinking was I was a recognizable face. I'd been on ZNS for many years, and this was just something as a filler. And I thought, this is simple enough. This is probably going to take an hour out of my day, and that's it. If that. Little did I know.
Former reporters remember the early days well, when the decision was made to pursue TV news with Jerome Sawyer as the face and driving force.
Then he came one day into the newsroom and he said, "All right, guys, I got an announcement to make." And we're like, "Okay, what?" He said, "Okay, we're going to now do TV news." And we're like, "Huh? Where are you going to do TV news?"
Newsbreak had humble beginnings from its home at the Dowswell Street radio station in 2003.
We had a big green cloth that we hung up by clothespins, and Jerome had a chair in the front there, and that's where he would read the news from. We would go into these little rooms or bathrooms to voice our stories, and then put our stories together.
Newsbreak was born. It was only intended to be like a 3-minute, just here's what happened in news today kind of update. No SOTs, no nothing, just that lasted for all of about a month.
Technology, however, took a while to catch up.
In those days, we were up in a little room upstairs in the back of Island FM on Dowswell Street. There were 6 of us. There was me, Sieska Adderley, Theo Seeley, Candino Knowles, Andrew Knowles, obviously all the guys here at Cable.
When we started Cable 12 Newsbreak, when I started Cable 12 Newsbreak as the anchor, we didn't have a teleprompter. We had to read from the paper, and we were in this little room, this green room, and Valdez or Aiken would be on the phone. "Okay, read the lead. Okay, don't make a mistake." And you're trying to, okay, da, da, da. And today in the news, da, 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 and this one gone. So starting off without a teleprompter was so right now considered archaic, but we had to do it.
But when it caught on, the momentum was unstoppable.
Join the Island FM Cable 12 news team every weeknight at 5:30, 7:30, and 9:30 for the Cable 12 Island FM News Break. A half-hour of commercial-free, up-to-the-minute news you can trust. Join us for the most complete news in the nation.
We sort of showed up without any fanfare. People just realized we were on because they saw us doing stuff. But I think in 2007, the 2007 general election was really when people really noticed us, because for the first time they had an alternative. They had an alternative to rallies. They had an alternative to political news.
And the new show in town showed up with new faces.
I had never even heard of Cable Newsbreak. I had never even heard about watched anything that they did.
Well, as an 18-year-old, I mean, it was so much to soak up, right? But if it's one thing that I could remember about the Island FM Cable 12 Newsbreak, it was that it was so community-minded. When you looked at all of the other news stations that were already in the business, we had a mandate to tell the story of the people, because that's what Newsbreak was all about.
what we really narrowed in on were more human interest stories during my time period. We wanted to bring those more to light. I remember covering a story with a family in Gambia. I think that was a story that always sticks out to me from my career. I think the outpouring of love that we got from the community who wanted to help, people were calling the news station, calling me, filling my inbox up. That's what made me want to focus more on human interest stories, and I think MB12 led in that arena. Our news leads in that arena still.
The level of investigative, in-depth, bringing stories that never made TV before, as well as for instance, our intro. It was a step above from what existed out there in the market.
We really pushed the limits. We went behind the stories, and you continue to go behind the stories. It was one of those things where people looked forward to seeing what else there was, right? So not just the A, B, and C, we gave the A to Z, and the product continues to do that.
It wasn't just the new show in town disrupting the media landscape, but it was the types of stories that the Island FM Newsbreak team went after that left an impression, and the team's drive to do something never done before.
We were able to get the average man to speak. We were able to give him a platform to speak, and I think that's where I saw the most growth in the station, because we were able to tell the stories of the people.
When our story continues, what it takes to make news in the Bahamas. That drive and hunger to bring the news was not only in front of the camera, but so much more so behind the scenes to the technical team, which told the stories of the nation through a camera lens with the use of sound, light, and motion.
You know, when I came in, I started working with a lot of new equipment that I had to, get familiar with. The equipment that I used to use in church. It was on another level.
We wanted to show the viewers something that, they'd never seen in Bahamian news, in terms of not only the digital presentation, but the type of stories. For the cameraman, it was we tried to show things, whether it was different angles.
There were some times that I had opportunities that I would go out on the field with them, to do interviews. That was my excitement. So it's just all exciting. It was just exciting.
The job took journalists and camera operators in places they would never have imagined, all to get the story.
I worked at a time when there was a lot of murders. That would have been the time when, during that election cycle in 2012, there were the banners about the murder count. So there was a lot of murder. So all hours of the night, there were things like going in the bushes with immigration officers chasing illegal migrants.
The traveling. If anything happens on the outer islands, trying to open a new building or break ground for a new hotel or whatever it is, government complex, it was exposure for me, to the outer islands, to the family islands, because when I first started working here, I never traveled to any island.
I wouldn't call it chaos, but there's so many things were going on at the exact same time, and you really got to spend some quality time with some of the candidates to see the sea of people that wanted the coverage, wanted to see and understand and feel with this thing that we were about to disseminate to them. We were in high demand then, and being a part of that on a daily basis, there's so many things to do every day. It was just a high point for me.
Highlights, I would say, was always election coverage and excitement around that.
And for the first time, the declared opposition had an equal platform as the government of the day, and that was revolutionary at the time.
Everyone always talks about some of the most important people they've interviewed, some of the places they've been able to travel, and I've had all of those opportunities. But I think the most impactful thing for me is being with the company throughout the ages, and seeing it start from this little room off Dalswell Street where I joined kind of late, and seeing it transition and flourish into what was at the time when you and I started working together, when it became NB12, and everybody just loved us back then because we really revolutionized news gathering and news presenting in the Bahamas, and I feel really proud to be a part of that transition.
That transition was a new look, feel, and name in 2010, the official introduction of NB12, a partnership with the Nassau Guardian.
When we first started, there was often this staid approach to news coverage. There was often, you didn't have a sense of feeling in the moment, in the news, and we changed a lot of that. Through Nat Sound, through more use of that, through chasing stories, relentlessly, through having a always be there, always go. Murder's 3 o'clock in the morning, cameraman's willing to get up, I'm willing to go, and always getting the story.
During the NB12 years, we became known for something that you helped to pioneer, the NB12 special. Right. Can you explain what is the NB12 special?
Well, the NB12 special was when we would take a politician or public figure's most recent comments and juxtapose those against his comments in the past. And they weren't really used to seeing that. And so if a politician says today, well, I never said that, or I never promised that, we were able to go back and show where he did exactly that and kind of juxtapose their previous words against their current words and show them where there was distance in between them. And it was something people began to come to fear.
People reach out to us and be like, hey, y'all need to do the NB12 special or the Our News special, which means hold them in the dance and bring back what they said 5-6 years ago as opposed to what they say now. So I love keeping people accountable and what our team does to keep people accountable.
Juan McCartney reports.
It was right here at police headquarters yesterday where the commissioner made that revelation. While he expounded at length about why police believe crime is down among many major categories, he did not provide details as to how much the categories have shifted. He also said that murder is down, a contention that we found is inaccurate.
News has been the best and the worst of my experience in my career, simply because when news is happening, you can't get anything else done. And so, a lot of the other creative content that we consistently produce, we had to let go of because this thing was just growing.
With that growth came the expansion to a $1 million studio at Robinson Road, and a new name.
And today's a historic day for Cable Bahamas since it's relaunching Cable 12 as Our TV. To tell us more about it, we have here in the studio Mr. David Burrows, Vice President of Marketing for Cable Bahamas.
As you can see, we've developed this brand new set. We've just spent about $1.5 million on turning our station into HD, building a brand new set, a brand new studio, and that's the first step.
Throughout the years, the drive to provide an accurate, trusted source for news persisted and grew to develop the products Bahamian viewers have come to expect.
You were able to be free and report it as you saw it, even when it came down to the lighthearted stories. I had my Fit Friday segments, People loved that. It took away from the seriousness sometimes of what was happening in the country. I would go to the grocery store and, there'd be some old woman, oh, I can't wait to see you on Friday. Mom, I do other stories too, I don't just work out on Fridays, But it was really good being a part of the product because we did so much with the little that we had, with the team, the good team that we had.
ZNS, for me, they set the standard. Right, they set a standard of what television was or what it should be here in the Bahamas. So what we did, we saw that. And the ones that came before me, they saw that and they said, hey, listen, I think we can do something a little different. It wasn't necessarily had to be better, but we wanted to offer an alternative.
When Our News, Our Story continues, we take a look behind the scenes at the people and ideas that shaped our news. While our audiences have seen the final product of the news night after night, the behind-the-scenes process has often been quite opaque, giving viewers no real sense of everything that our journalists and technical teams pour into nightly news. Since Weekend News was launched, news hasn't missed a day.
It was serious, it was tough business. I think you said, the news has been on every single day since we launched Weekend News, but I don't think people understand that the news never stops for people who work in the news. So in the morning, you wake up thinking about what the story is of the day, you're getting the crime report, when you go to bed, you're thinking about what's happening next. Sometimes you get called out of your bed. It was such a constant thing. So I think it was important that we had a life outside of that and we connected on a personal level. So I think the highlight too, the friendships, the relationships that I made.
Jerome sent me to the hospital to cover the injured that were coming in and to speak with the families, and that was the first time that I learned in the field that journalists aren't allowed to have emotion. Even talking about it now, I'm still kind of emotional, right? I mean, you see these bodies coming in, you see the injured coming in, you see the families wailing, and you as a journalist have a task to tell that story. No matter how many tears you see coming down their faces, you have a task to tell that story, and so I think that's definitely a memorable experience for me.
When we talk about people whose children had died, we went and spoke with those people and we humanized those people. And we got a lot of flack for that, where people would be like, well, you're capitalizing on people's deaths. And the connection I was trying to make as we were seeing record murder numbers was that these aren't just numbers. Right? These murders are shattering families and really tearing apart the fabric of our society. And we wanted to highlight how important it was. And I think we did that. And I think people became to understand that we were on their side and that we were a voice for them to come to.
But back then, just being able to go and sit down with a family and tell their story of triumph in the midst of adversity, that connected me the most. And I think that still, as a journalist, for me, it's a story for me more than sitting down and interviewing a world leader or sitting down and interviewing a government leader, is being able to tell the story of people.
I've had highs, I've had lows, I've had emotional stories, highlights of my career. I'll go professionally, then I'll go personally. I interviewed a family whose daughter had cancer. Before the night I interviewed them, I always get emotional. The story aired, she had passed away. And I got very close with that family. When I got pregnant, they bought something for my daughter, which was years later.
Defense Force and immigration officers found themselves on a major search through bushes and beaches of southern New Providence this morning after a Haitian sloop landed, sending immigrants fleeing by the dozens.
I basically grew up on that station, right? I came in there a fresh out of college young man with no beard, barely any facial hair, eager to get my feet wet in journalism. I had great editors, the likes of Kendia Dames, Juan McCartney, wanting to great editorial leadership, and they always pushed me to actually get the best stories, to be the best reporter that I can be.
Working in news is a really good perspective too, and you get to see the world from so many different angles. What I really love too was that I got to see the highs and the lows about life. It teaches you about life.
The pressure of nightly news gave way to some of the more lighthearted moments.
Mostly to be a part of a team that was so dynamic, to really push the limits, watching everybody grow off the screen shenanigans. Con los terroristas.
And do the Harlem Shake.
The story of Our News has been 20 years in the making, and it's only as strong as the people who have helped to build it. One of those individuals is Valdez Ferguson, the longest-serving member of the team, who celebrates 20 years along with Our News.
Well, we were always cutting edge. Cutting edge was always our thing. Some of the things that we're currently doing now, in a live setting, we were doing back then in 2003 actually. So it has grown a lot.
Ferguson has not only seen the faces of news change, but also the technology that brings the news to the people night after night.
Going from 15 minutes to now an hour, that's the most major one. Changing from beta tape to mini DV, from mini DV to card, and now to just digital files. That's the major thing right now. We are trendsetters. We've made all other medias to do things that they never thought they could have done, but we did it first.
Personally, I came on this job single, met my husband, had a family, so this job, or working in this industry or working here, has actually enhanced my life professionally and personally. So I can't say how much I'm so appreciative to just be here and be a part of this team for so many reasons.
I learned a lot just from being here. I think more than the work itself, it was the culture that was fostered here. You know, it was more so family.
It was never an individual success. It was always the group success, and that was the bond that kept everyone together.
I felt like, and I still do feel, that we are the top news channel going on right now. And from back then, NB12, hey, that was the highlight. That's it. If it wasn't NB12, it wasn't nothing else happening, no other news.
Newsbreak was a foundation that got me started. I will never forget it because it opened the door for me in this industry and developed a love for this industry. And I'm grateful. I think on this 20 years, I think there's nothing we can do but celebrate a solid foundation. And that's why I look at it today and recognize that this station has to succeed because it was built on a very firm and solid and comprehensive foundation.
For me, even though I work at a competing station, Cable 12, Island FM Newsbreak, our news will always be home, right? I think of the media circuit as a family. We all feed off of one another. And I think that a little friendly competition is good. You know, sometimes you end up on the same assignment as someone who's a friend at the competing station. And, you know, I'm like, you know what? Let's see who's going to tell the better story tonight. And I think that's all for the better.
Industry-wise, I think private media opened and changed the game for the way Bahamians watch the news and listen to the news, specifically now that social media has been dominant in the news, and if you're not on social media, you really ain't saying nothing.
Having other competitors in the market, I take pride in that as well, because I know that who they are today is a result of what we were doing. And they were watching and figuring out how can they come and match or even try and beat us. And so I think the public has benefited from growth and the competition and what we have brought to the industry. Because when you're the only game in town, it's easy to just sit back, you know, and let it happen. But we now made it a race. And that race is still going on every single day.
What would you like to see for the next 20 years?
I'll tell you, again, something that gives me great pride. When I look at those who have passed through here, and to see where they are and what they're doing. Many have moved on to other jobs, but they are in great positions as a result of, you know, their time here and their work here, and the list is very long, and I think longer than people even realize.
All right, Chrissy, coming to you in 3, 2.
And so the story continues from Newsbreak to NB12 and Our News. The Cable 12 news team remains committed and dedicated to providing fresh, accurate news night after night. So thank you for making Our News a part of your life. And now on to the next chapter.